Hello and welcome back to our Node lessons. So it's a beautiful Tuesday morning and we are ready to take our application to the next level. In our last lesson, we built a fully functional CRUD application. We can create, we can read, we can update and delete guestbook entries. So this is a huge milestone. But if we look at our code, specifically our server mongo.js file, it's starting to get a little crowded and a little bit messy. Right now, this one file is doing everything. It's connecting to the database, it's setting up Express, it's defining all our routes, and it contains all the logic of what happens when the user visits those routes. I mean, for a small project, this might seem okay, but imagine if our app had 50 routes or 100 routes. So this file will become a nightmare to manage and debug and to expand. Today we're going to fix that. We're going to learn how to structure our application like a professional developer, making it organized, scalable, and much better to maintain. We're going to learn about the MVC pattern. Right? Now MVC stands for models, views, and controllers. So it's not a framework or a library, it's just a design pattern, a professional way of organizing your code based on the responsibilities. Let's use this analogy. Think of our application like a restaurant. Models are like the kitchen staff in charge of the food, so they interact directly with the ingredients, in our case the database, and then the model's only job is to handle data, fetching it, creating it, updating it. It doesn't know or care about what the restaurant looks like. And then the views are the dining area of our restaurant. This is what the customer sees. It's the menu. So the tables, the presentation of the food. So in our app, the views are EJS files, the HTML and CSS that gets sent to the user's browser. Controllers are the waiters. The waiter is a crucial link between the customer and the kitchen. So they take the customer's order, the request, tell the kitchen what to prepare, and then interact with a model and then bring the prepared food back to the customer. So meaning we're sending the response back and render the view. Let's go ahead and create a new directory. I think we can call it perhaps lesson, let's call it lesson 12, and we can just say lesson 12 hyphen Now the first thing that we need to do is to create our new folder structure. So inside of our project folder, we're going to create 4 new folders. We're going to create models, so this is where our database logic will live, and then we will create views. We've already have this, so this is where our EGS will live, and then we don't need to create it, just recognize its role, and then we'll create 4 folders. So this is our, then we quickly need to go to our previous lessons, and then just under the views we're gonna copy the edit the guestbooks, all of our files under the views, and then just go ahead and paste them on the views folder that we just created now. Alright, perfect. Now the next thing is to create the entry model.js. So we're gonna say new item, and then we want to create this file within our models folder or models directory, and we're gonna call it entry model .js. Now the model's job is to manage the database connection schema. So now this file is gonna contain all our database related code. So we might wanna copy some code from the old server file and then just move it here. First we're going to import Mongo client object ID and chalk. Then we can just go to our old file and then just copy the URI with our database connection string, and then let's just go ahead and paste it on our new model. Now we need to go back to our old file again, and then we just need to copy the client object and then just go ahead and paste it on our entry model file. There we go. Then now the next thing is to declare a variable. So we need to set up the entries collection variable. Let's go ahead and declare the entries collection variable. Now the next thing that we need to do is to create a function. So this is an asynchronous function called let's call it connect to DB. Connect to, actually I want to say connect to DB. Alright, and then this is gonna be a synchronous function that will handle the actual connection and set up our entries collection. So we're gonna wrap it in a try catch block just to handle any connection errors gracefully. And then finally, this is the most important part. Okay, let's just say console.log, and you can just say maybe model connected to, just pass a message. The model is connected to MongoDB class. I can't remember the name of the database. I think it's guestbook. Guestbook. That is the actual name of the database. _ app. And we're just gonna store all the data that we're receiving from a database into the entries collection variable. And then let's go ahead and cache the error. If maybe there's an error, maybe some sort of, maybe if there's a connection error, then we can just catch that error there. We can just say console.log. You can always use chalk and with a red color, and you can just say maybe model failed to connect to the database or something. Now the most important part, we need to export the connect DB function in the entries collection variable and the object ID. So this just makes them available to other files in our applications, just to import and use. Our model is now self-contained unit for handling a database. Alright, so this just fixed that. We're supposed to use curly braces instead of parentheses. Alright, next up we need to create a controller. So this is where the core logic of our applications will live. So we need to create a new file inside of controllers, and we can just call it entry controller. Inside of controllers, and then we can just name it entry controller.js. There you go. Alright, so now the first thing that we need to do is to import entry collection and the object ID all from our model. Alright, so that's gonna be so we can just say dot and slash models dot entry model dot js, and then we might as well import chalk from chalk. Now each function from our route becomes a named export in our controller. So this logic for app.get it becomes a function called get all entries, and then the logic for app.get slash entry ID becomes get edit, and so on for create entry and update entry and delete entry. So now each function has the exact same structure. It takes the request and the result, and then it contains the logic for finding the data in the model and rendering a view. So we also need to import our entries collection object ID from model that we created, which we've already done above. So here we just want to render the guest book, and then along with the entries. And then let's go ahead and create another function. Let's just call it create entry. Now we're gonna go back to our old server file and just copy some of the functions inside of our routes and just paste them into the controller. So let's just copy and let's go ahead and paste it into the controller. Let's just fix the structure a little bit. There we go. Let's just indent this a little bit. I don't know, I just always find the code looks weird when it's not indented correctly. Right, so we're gonna do the same with the other functions. I think they get edit. Let's actually do that. Get edit. Let's go ahead and copy. Let's go back and just paste. Again, we're gonna fix the indentation. Kind of looks weird. Well, it's still gonna work. It's just, I don't know. I just find that maybe the indentation sometimes sort of disturbs me if it's not indented correctly. Alright, now we're gonna do the same thing with the update entry. Then let's just copy and let's quickly paste. Alright, now let's do the delete entry. Again, we're just gonna go back to our file and just copy and let's just paste it right here. Our controller now has all the logic, but how does our app know which controller function to run for which URL? So there's a job of a router. Now we create a new file in the routes folder called entry routes. So let's do that quickly. So we're gonna just add it on the routes directory, and then we can just call it entry routes.js. So this file will act as a mini map for application. There we go. Right now we also need to import Express from Express, and then import all the methods from our controllers. So let's quickly do that. So for the get entry, and then we need create entry, and then we also need get edit page, what is update, and then delete. Alright, perfect. Alright, first we import Express, then we create a new router instance, and then next we've imported all the functions from the entry controller. Then we simply need to define our Rust just like we did before, but instead of writing the function logic here, we just provide the name of the controller function that should handle. So the get request to home is actually handled by the get all entries, and then we need a post request to submit is handled by the it should be the create entry. So this makes our routes file incredibly clean and easy to read. So it's like a table of contents for the app's features. Just need to simply repeat the same steps for all other entries, and then finally we can just export the entire file. Okay, we've moved all the logic into the MVC structure. Now we need to create a new file. Let's just call it app.js. So this will just reflect the new cleaner role. Now in this file, first we need to import our dependencies like Express and Chalk, and of course our new modules. Alright, then we just need to create a new instance of Express and of course our port, and then we need to create our start server function. Inside of it we'll just call connect to DB, just to make sure that we are connected to the database before we do anything else. Right, then we need to set up our middleware, the view engine, URL encoded, and static. And here is the magic line of app.use, like home/entry routes. So this tells our main app, for any request that comes in hand it in over to the entry routes file, just to figure out what to do. Alright, finally we start the server with app.listen. So we can just go ahead in our old file and just copy everything there, because our file no longer knows or cares about individual routes or database logic. So it just knows that it needs to run a server and use a router. So this is separation of concerns in action. And then finally we can just call our start server function, and there we go. And perfect, our application still works exactly the same as before, but now our code is professionally structured, clean, and ready to scale. So just to recap, we've learned about the MVC, model, view, and controller design pattern for organizing our code. We created a model to handle all our database interactions. We also created a controller to hold our application logic. We created a router to map our URLs to the correct controller function. So this structure will make your life as a developer so much easier and your projects grow. But you may have noticed we still have the try and catch blocks in our control. So in our next lesson, we're going to fix that by creating a centralized global error handler, just to make our code even cleaner.